Today, I had the absolute privilege of sitting down with the CEO of a project and company called Artie. Now, at the surface level, Artie looks like a mobile gaming platform. However, what we start to experience when we dig deeper into this interview, we realize that their ambitions and where they're setting out to go is a lot bigger than that. They are seeking to become a full-fledged entertainment conglomerate. And when you start to hear about the accomplishments that they've already made, you'll see that they are well along the way to do that. Beyond that, they actually know their audience and they know how they can blend in Web3, and they've maximized their own ability to achieve their goals. So I'm really excited for you to hear about not only what they have accomplished as a project, but also their thoughts overall on the entire ecosystem of blockchain and mobile gaming, and how we can fuse different streams of entertainment all into one piece. This content right here is sponsored by Artie. They are the ones who are enabling me to sit down and interview interesting people and talk about what I think and what they think is really going on in the entire ecosystem of blockchain and gaming and everything else like that, and how we can make mass adoption happen. So thank you to Artie for sponsoring this content. Without further ado, let's check out the interview. All right, I am sitting down now with Ryan with Artie. You kind of run the show over there. Now, look, I want to tell you up front, I like to do my own research. I typically get very deep in the weeds. That's what people follow me for. But when it comes to interviews, I intentionally don't get deep in the weeds because I want to do a little bit of discovery on my own, and that way this is a very genuine conversation. So, yep. From the basic research, what I've done so far, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys operate on mostly Ethereum, and you have had some pretty stellar collaborations so far, some more in the works. Your artwork is killer, and you're centering yourself up, or you're setting yourself up to be a kind of metaverse for gaming and collaborations. Take me through what the inspiration was to create this in the first place.
So you totally nailed it. I want to add one key differentiator.
Okay.
We're doing this by going over the top around app stores directly into mobile social with our games. So these are mobile games that have ownable game assets via NFTs, 721s, and everything, all the data is streaming down to you from the cloud, but we're actually rendering in the web browser of, say, Discord, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and we're using that embedded browser, and we're sort of using link in bio on our own accounts and also in the community to kind of have the game live amorphously across social channels. So what we're doing is not quite a web game in the normal sense, and it's not a cloud game. It's a bit of a hybrid, and it allows us to run really high quality graphics that HTML and JavaScript alone couldn't do, thanks to sort of some of the technology that Unity's been working on and some of the technology that we've been working on. So that's kind of the key difference is, you're either making Web3 games on PC or PC browser, or now Apple lets you make them as apps if you pay them 30%, right? So for us, we're just not paying 30% and we're going direct to player. So that's kind of the unique thing that we're trying to do.
So, and actually you said something that was pretty interesting there. You were talking about somebody can play in Discord, somebody can play in TikTok. I assume because it's all browser-based, somebody playing in Discord would be able to, exactly. It's the same game. It's almost like having cross-platform if you're thinking about console gaming, where an Xbox player could play against a PlayStation player or something.
Great point. So here's a way to think of it. Like consoles used to be hardware, and we'd have to choose, do we want Atari, Nintendo, or then do we want Xbox and PlayStation? And then I think with, game stores on PC, you have Epic Game Store, you have Steam. So that became more like software. And now I think you could argue that we're sort of like moving up the stack to like the social layer. So now you can think of like the console being TikTok or Discord, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the game is essentially the same, but sort of where you choose to play it, or the community, or the aspect of the community, or I guess the corner of the community you're playing it in might be different. Like maybe I discovered the game on TikTok from a friend or an influencer. I follow Artie's page there, and then I start to see all their content, and I know to return to it, I just click the link in bio, kind of like Zynga Farmville days. Like, hey, it just lives in Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for other people, they may have discovered it through crypto Twitter, and they join the Discord, and they're kind of part of that Discord community, which is maybe like kind of where our power users sit, right?
Mm-hmm.
A different type of player. So I think that's really interesting, this idea that your community can kind of live across these channels, but also play the game on site where they exist. Whereas normally games that have really strong communities, the communities are disparate from where the gameplay exists. So typically you're playing via a PC build, right? And then you've got like Twitch and Discord and YouTube where the community lives, but the gameplay doesn't happen there, right? It's kind of two separate experiences. So we think this idea of like bring that into one holistic thing can be quite intriguing.
So was that the inspiration for starting this? Was the fact that you kind of, I want to say like cracked this code, but figured out how to do this and then integrate the assets with blockchain on top of that?
Yes.
How did all of that come together? It seems like that would.
Well, so what we realized, so there was a key insight as to why we weren't just doing regular mobile games over the top without app stores, and why we felt the Web3 piece and the ownable game assets was important. And that is basically, if you don't have an app icon to return to on your home screen, you need to kind of train people like Zynga Farmville days that, oh, I play this game on TikTok because I found it there. Or, oh, I play this game on Discord because I joined the community there. And that's great. But what you want is you want your community to be so excited about the game, love the game, but also if they own their game assets, they have more skin in the game. They're more likely to rep the brand, spread the word to their friends, wear the merch, go to the live events. And we've obviously all seen through Crypto, Pong, Sport API Club, and everything else thereafter, that the kind of social proof element of NFTs lives on Twitter. And I believe to some extent, it's starting to live on other platforms like TikTok and Instagram, maybe, especially if we reach the mainstream, it could live there. So our thought was, well, if that's where kind of like the social cloud aspect of NFT lives, what if the actual utility and gameplay live there too? That could be a pretty powerful vortex where you have basically the most culturally relevant entertainment medium today, gaming, in the most culturally relevant destination, social media on your phone, with the most culturally relevant way to flex and kind of prove that you're part of the club, NFTs. That all seems to go together if you could get the recipe right, And I just personally feel like mobile gaming, as successful as it is, and we all know it's taken like over 50% market share. It's growing rapidly. I think some people have estimated by the end of the decade, it'll be almost 75% of all gaming will be on mobile. So, PC and console kind of still flat at this point. So we know that mobile matters. It's just that mobile, in all due respect, is not cool for a lot of us. There's not fun, cool games. It's fairly broad, fairly generic. It's going after usually an older audience, or that older audience is kids 12 and under. And there's this kind of gap in between that we started to recognize when we started to look at data from Sensor Tower and App Annie. And it was basically that 13 to 30-year-olds aren't really playing mobile games, despite the fact that they're on their phones more than any other age group. Mm-hmm. And they do play PC and console games, but what's missing from mobile games for them? One, they didn't grow up with app stores, so they don't look to Apple and Google as curators. They look to their friends and influencers on the 5 or 6 social and video channels that they participate in, the 5 or 6 apps, right? Number two, the mobile game publishers were making games for 18 to 40-year-olds, but they followed them and aged up over the last 12 years since they started. And it's kind of all the same incumbents, right? And number three, it's just a chicken or an egg. If you make really broad games for like 30 to 50-year-olds, which is the highest spending demographic, particularly women, and you don't specifically make games for say 18 to 30-year-olds, they're not going to want to play your games. Yeah. So we're like, can we just take tried and true gameplay mechanics and genres that are proven to be effective on mobile and just make them a hell of a lot edgier and cooler, in the way that we do that. So that kind of led us to what our first game is. And we can talk more about that, but, we tried to basically do a PvP Clash style game, but using beer pong meets Mortal Kombat as this really crazy genre mashup. But everything else about it is very similar to a Clash style game in terms of like how the game operates.
Yeah. I started to dig into the game itself too. And my first thought was, oh, this is different. Like I haven't seen really anything like this. It does look like something that as I'm a little bit outside of your age range, but
Me
I
too,
would
by the
be,
way. Me too.
but I would be interested in picking that up because you're right. I am on my phone a lot, but I can't say I've played a game on my phone in 6 or 7 years.
And downloading a game is a big commitment. Like you got to wait for probably 1 to 2 gigs to download, and it's just a mental block, I think, for a lot of people. But if you're like, hey, this trailer is pretty cool, I can literally just click this link right in TikTok or right in Discord, try it out, and start playing with a bunch of people. Chances are we're going to convert you more likely than like if you had to download that big heavy app.
Yeah, yeah. So, how much experience do you have in blockchain or your
So
staff?
So our team has quite a bit, but like a lot of us, we hired a really senior team of full stack engineers, backend engineers, and a lot of them became Solidity developers over the last couple of years. Like I think the whole industry, like it's very rare to find someone who's been a Solidity developer for like 5 years, right? So we just have some really brilliant engineers who've kind of picked everything up as they've gone along, and we're really proud of like the smart contract work that we've done. We've really maintained really small gas fees, and we've written some tweet threads and blog posts about this. So yeah, I think we're like anyone. We're kind of learning as we go. But we have a team of about 50 people, mostly from gaming companies. Riot Games, EA, Epic, Zynga, Jam City, others as well. But yeah, we're all kind of learning together.
Yeah, no, I think everybody is. It's the space is just too new to say you're doing anything other than learning and watching it evolve and
Yeah.
just trying to be a part of it. That's one of the beautiful things. And I think we'll get into that, just the core ethos of that towards the end of this video. Right now I'm going to keep it a little on topic. Take me through the game. You said it's beer
Yeah.
pong meets Mortal Kombat, which is what I was checking out and thinking this is really cool. Where did
Yep.
that inspiration come from? How does it work?
So we were thinking like, well, if we're really trying to reach 18 to 30 or 18 to 35-year-olds, because that probably fits with like the younger side of NFT collectors. I think NFT collectors, if you look at OpenSea's data, is like 25 to like 35, but then it certainly goes a little bit older too, into 40 to 45. But we also thought like, if you want to capture youth culture, you probably want like 17 or 18 to 25-year-olds. That's probably pretty important. If you look at most free-to-play games that start on PC or console that become very culturally relevant, that age group of players of like teenagers or late teens to like mid-20s is probably where you find most of your free-to-play players who, by and large, buy nothing but spread the word and create content and keep your game top of mind. So we kind of felt like it was really important to get at that age group, but to also like offer a game that maybe was viewed in a different way by people in their 30s or even early 40s. So for me, I went to college. I played beer pong. I think beer pong has transcended frat culture into more of the mainstream of the last decade or so. And when we actually did some research, which is kind of funny to think we did some research on beer pong, we found that it's the most widely played game amongst that age group. And it's really easy to pick up, but you can kind of have skill and master it. But we also kind of felt like beer pong alone as a mobile game is not that exciting, at least in terms of like playing it for months or even years. So we thought like, what if we did a genre mashup with like a Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter style kind of retro fighting game where we introduced sort of like power-ups or defensive maneuvers. And essentially you can look at it like I'm playing a fighting game expressed through beer pong, or I'm playing a beer pong game expressed as a fighting game, right? You kind of look at it either way. So for example, you could freeze the table during a turn if you've earned the right to deploy that power up, eliminate bounce shots from your opponent. You could send an energy blast and knock your opponent through the wall. You could cause this squid to come up through the middle of the table and gobble up a ball midair, right? You could ghost or levitate your final cup and make your opponent miss on the last shot quite dramatically. We also have like a heat meter and a phase meter a la NBA Jam where you can catch fire if you hit 3 shots, then your shots get easier until you miss. Inverse, you miss 3 shots in a row, shots get harder. So it's this kind of epic tug of war of momentum. And of course, like any fighting game, you have epic finishing moves that, annihilate your opponent. And with all these really fun characters that kind of look like vinyl art toys and like these creatures, it's gonna be really fun. So in our concept trailer that we did, which is this cool animation, you can kind of see some of the creative behind our thoughts of like how epic this game could get. And I think when you think about those power-ups along with really great music, because we're kind of working with really interesting music artists to do the score of the game, and really compelling sound effects, you want to get players into this like flow state that's kind of transcending the game of beer pong into something more fantastical, right? So that's kind of how we think of the game. And also, like any good you know, clash style game, each match is like 5 to 7 minutes. So maybe on the low end, people show up every day or two to play for 5 to 7 minutes, or they're playing for like 20 to 30. And you know, maybe there's a few or a small percentage of power users who are playing for hours just because they're trying to unlock these NFTs that they can earn in the game by being atop the leaderboard or you know, winning tournaments. So that's the game. I did want to also say it's not a play to earn game. It's a free to play game, which I think is really important, because if you're going to live in this mobile social layer on social, you don't want to have friction. You don't want to have newbies, you know, sign up for Coinbase, link their bank account, wait 5 days, buy ETH, transfer it to MetaMask, buy a native token. And then all of a sudden you have to buy the best NFTs that have the best stats. Otherwise you'll toil in obscurity, you know, because you have this kind of play to win scenario where some NFTs are better in the game than others. So we kind of said, no, just keep it simple. Look at any free to play game. You know, I'll use the most obvious ones, Fortnite and Call of Duty. The game is free. You can use kind of common characters to start playing the game that are non-NFTs, but anything that's kind of uncommon, or as we put it, rare, epic, or legendary, those are NFTs. You have to earn those or buy those, you know, like any other game. You know, you're buying skins, or you're buying crates or boxes, or you're just kicking ass and you're earning them by being great at the game. So for us, that's going to hopefully get a lot of people playing the game, and then we'll slowly indoctrinate the masses into ownable game assets and NFTs, but sort of demystify it. We don't need to talk about NFTs as a file format or technology. It's kind of like, you know, when we went from MP3s as a file format and Napster and LimeWire, which like for me as a teenager was like an incredible time to be alive. I know that sounds silly, but it was. To then like iTunes, where no one talked about the phrase MP3 anymore. It was just music, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're probably at that juncture right now where we've kind of gone from this hype cycle of like insiders and NFT craze to like, okay, how do we now build to that next momentum point where it's for everyone?
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of things. You hit the nail on the head. That was exactly where I was going to go next, was the pricing model and how that works with adoption. Because we see with mobile games, which is where your target audience is, most of those games are play to win to some degree, right? And beyond that, the business side of it, like you said, 30% of that money is going right back to the App Store and not to the development team. Entirely separate topic that I'm sure we're going to get to. But mobile games are play to win. You know, I could, if I had $50,000 right now, I could download Clash of Clans and max out my base, and you know, and dominate everyone with absolutely no skill.
But few people really do that, because then it's not a lot of fun, right? So like, yes, you have your mega whales who do that, and they have the means to do that, but they represent like 1% or maybe 10% of 1%, right?
Yeah.
So I think like you do have those anomalies as players, but by and large, it is a play to win, not a pay to win experience for the majority, right? And I think like that's why it's important to us to recognize there's a spectrum of possible players in this kind of mobile gaming experience we're trying to create. It's not going to be too dissimilar from what you see now. So the way we think about it is 90% or more, maybe even like 95, 98% are going to come in and play for free, buy nothing. But hopefully, because the game is so memified and potentially primed to go viral, we hope, they want to spread the word, and they are kind of chasing these game assets, so we can incentivize them to do so by potentially airdropping NFTs to people who share the funniest kill of the week, or, you know, if you agree to link your social accounts and stream async video clips that includes a link to the game with attribution to you, you'll be rewarded for all of your friends who jump in. You'll get more in-game currency that moves you closer to opening up that next crate, right? That might have that next rare NFT in it. So there's a lot of ways to incentivize people who don't want to spend money or can't spend money to still kind of pursue these really cool skins. Because we all know from all the games we love already, it's all about expressing yourself and kind of, you know, flexing and this kind of stuff, but they don't actually have to be, you know, performing better in the game. That's when I think you actually kill the gameplay experience and you create that imbalance.
Massive multiplayer games in general, like if we think back to the first MMOs, they really did introduce the digital flex.
Right.
And that became a huge deal. Many people argue that like that culture of digital flex is what led to the popularity of NFTs. I think
Right.
Gary
Agreed.
V Gary V said it best that like if he bought, a $1 million couch right now,
Yep.
maybe 50 people a year would see it. If he buys a $1
Right.
million NFT, that thing is going to get 100,000 likes in its first 5
Yes.
minutes.
Yeah.
So the
No, you're right. And like you could even argue, to go build on top of Gary Vee's point, you could almost argue that NFTs on Twitter are a game unto themselves. Like you're playing a game in Twitter, a social game or experiment. So like, what is a game really defined as today? Like, yes, like we know quite literally what a game is, but you could say being in the NFT space as a collector, participating in NFT Twitter is a game as well, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's what this makes it even more fascinating is watching this evolution happen
Yeah.
as new entrants come into the market. And people like you who are building games that are designed to get the average everyday user in
Yeah.
are going to eventually lead to this adoption. Somebody, that 2% that is going to spend money on it,
Yeah.
some of those people have never interacted with a blockchain at all before,
Right.
right? So
So exactly. So what if instead of having to like scare them off by saying this game has NFTs in it and you have to set up a wallet and buy them before you can play, you instead let them play. It might be weeks or months before they earn their first NFT. They just like the game. And then all of a sudden we ping them and we're like, hey, you earn the right to mint this digital collectible, otherwise known as an NFT. Here are your options. We can custody it for you until you decide to create a wallet, or you can create a wallet right now, mint it to your wallet. Here are your options. We support as many wallets as possible. Here's an explainer video of what it means. And then you can go do that and come back with your address and boom, you're good. Now you own this thing. And not only can you hopefully take it to our subsequent games, because we're going to have these interoperable game characters across any games that are in our ecosystem, but our NFTs have fully rigged and textured GLB files that I think are the format of choice today. So you can bring them into any other game that supports that file format, and that's really the foundation of the metaverse. I know that term has jumped the shark, but I view the metaverse, I think it's funny, like 5 years ago, I was in VR, working at one of the biggest VR companies doing a lot with Oculus. We all thought the metaverse was, an immersive experience like VR. And I think what we all learned after VR kind of hit like a glass ceiling a bit is VR is more so about the social experience of lots of people together and sort of your agency in a world. But I think also the metaverse is interoperability between all these disparate experiences. And I think that's what the blockchain singularly today unlocks, is the interoperability aspect. So if we have a way to prove you own something and a way to say we have a common file format in GLBs, or you could argue OBJs or FBXs, but I think GLBs probably is the way. You have those ingredients now. You have those two things you need to create the beginnings of these interconnected digital experiences where me as a player, I can traverse them at will,
Yeah, man, you got the wheel spinning now. I'm just like daydreaming about how it's all going to happen and come together.
And we all know it's going to take years to actually see like that hit a crescendo where we're like, yes, this is it. And then it'll take even more years to like get to Ready Player One, where like we are immersed in it in like our AR glasses that also do VR, and we've got the full package. But I kind of started to think when I was in VR, that step, like the immersive step, is the least important step, and that could probably come last. It's more about like, player empowerment and ownership and interoperability. I think those things are probably more important than immersive to come first.
I do want to spend some time talking about metaverse, because you've been talking about metaverse. You're trying to build a like a metaverse style experience across your games where the assets that you earn are portable. I was recently interviewing somebody else, and they had this concept, this idea that there isn't going to be a metaverse. It's going to be a lot of metaverses that seek to find a way to operate across borders effectively.
Yes, 100%. I agree. So like, let's say Artie's creating an ecosystem where all of our games have our characters in them across, drops or seasons. Like, think about Fortnite skins that, come out with partners like Marvel or, Naomi Osaka or someone, right? So imagine like, okay, we're creating a first game where all those characters are playable character skins, but then we create a second game. We have some third-party games. We do some like second-party kind of adaptations. All of a sudden, maybe in a year or two's time, we have like a half dozen or a dozen games in our ecosystem, and they all use these same characters. So like, okay, I guess you could argue that's our metaverse. But then, you have some other gaming company who has their own thing. And, we realize that like we all have like these game characters. Now they do have separate rigs and separate models. So that the hard part is the rigging and the translation of animations into separate metaverses. Like that piece, I couldn't go as deep as I'd like to on that. But if you were to ask sort of our team and our people rigging and animating, it seems like that piece is a little challenging. Like, okay, our GLBs come fully rigged and textured. Okay, now that doesn't necessarily mean a game is ready to accept them, without doing any kind of like preparation or adaptation, right? So that piece is still a little unknown to me to like figure out how that's going to work, but I have no doubt that it will get solved. And there's lots of smart companies and people working on all that tooling and at the game engine level as well.
Yeah, I think, probably the best known metaverse at this point is Otherside, right? Because it's Yuga's. And I think, that's really cool.
Wouldn't you say though, I know they don't call it a metaverse, but wouldn't you say Roblox is a metaverse?
Yeah, I mean, I would. And I mean, you could go so far as to even say Minecraft or things like that.
Oh, yeah. Minecraft, definitely.
There's Sandbox, and Decentraland. There's
also like what qualifies a metaverse? Like I think you kind of need to have one or the other of these things. So either you need to be a sandbox style game with UGC content creation on one end of the spectrum, or you need to be a platform for developers, particularly amateur developers like Roblox, like a bottoms up game platform with interconnected kind of games that are of a similar aesthetic and kind of share assets and stuff. I feel like if you kind of check one of those boxes, you're probably good. There's other people who would though say that Fortnite's a metaverse, and I'm not like dogmatic about it. I would say like, yeah, maybe it is. Like, yeah, it's only one game, and they do have these different game modes now, but it's such a like social experience that
they've hosted concerts in their
game. Yeah, so maybe you could say like, yeah, once they went from just the core game or game loop to other things like concerts, then all of a sudden you could say, yeah, that's a metaverse because it's like it's flexible, it can do anything. So yeah, I feel like it's not worth being like super rigid about the definition. I do think though there are too many games that are just games that are saying they're metaverses, so there is a line to draw somewhere where it's like, okay, if you're a single player game with no social component, no interoperability, no UGC content, and no like developer ecosystem, like you're probably not like a metaverse, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess where I was going with that is this interoperability of metaverses is to me the most exciting part, because right now it does feel gated. I think that's the best way to put it is, it does feel like, only people who have an Otherside deed or a Bored Ape will get in, or only people who own a portal on the Solana blockchain will get into there. And the hope that I have is something like what you guys are building, where it's free to get started. Somebody could earn and mint an NFT that then gives them access to the metaverse, the entire metaverse.
Right.
That's where it starts to open up and get exciting, and that's where I think mass adoption comes from.
What you hit on that I think is worth unpacking a bit is most Web3 games today want to sell out their NFT drops, right? So they sort of use those NFTs as your exclusive ticket to their games. Otherwise, maybe they would worry like, why do you need to sell NFTs and sell out? So like our view is that by kind of eliminating that requirement, yes, you might put your like next drop in doubt in a bear market to some degree. But if you open up the gates to anyone, you might see the paradigm change where no longer will you need to see these like specific drop dates where they have to mint out in an hour, but more so like, Fortnite, hey, we launched a new collection of skins. Unlike Fortnite, they're not like, they are finite. Like it's not like, an unlimited supply. However, like Fortnite, if Fortnite was to say like, hey, we're doing this collab with this really cool artist or collaborator, and we're going to like launch this today, but we are going to make it scarce, and we're going to, make it scarce like relative to our player base. So I don't know what that number is, but let's just say it's like, you know, 100,000 units or a million units. Like maybe that sounds crazy, right? But like, let's say it's 100,000. Maybe they're not worried about selling out. Like maybe they're just like, hey, like these things will eventually sell out, but it might take like a month. Like who cares, right? Because these assets are not just purely for speculators to like, see like these moonshots come true, right?
Yeah.
Like these are things that, yes, if they appreciate over time in value, they 1x, 2x, but I'm getting such an incredible everyday gaming and social experience with some other perks like, yes, free merch, live events, early access to other things. I think we kind of completely changed the paradigm of like what the incentive structure is for owning these things, right? As opposed to being an overly financialized asset, more akin to like a rare sneaker or a baseball card or a piece of art. And we treat it more like, yeah, it's my way to express myself and unlock more perks and value. And oh, cool, by the way, if I hold it for a year or two, I might 2x my money. That's cool. Like, I feel like the masses would be down with that. We're only in this like small bubble where a very small number of people are looking at these items as if they are there to make them rich overnight.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's because that's what headlines like to sell you in a bull market.
Yeah.
2 or 3 people make major money, big headlines, because they made an absolutely ridiculous bet and it paid off for them. And now that sets off a 12-month mania. And that's the part that gives me pause about NFTs. And this is someone who has been in NFTs for a long time now. This is the part that gives me pause, is because I have seen exponentially more people get wrecked by jumping into it because they misunderstand the actual purpose and utility of tokenizing an asset. So
yeah,
I think that's why if I were to bet on NFTs right now, my biggest hope, or I think the thing that gives me the most hope for NFTs, is gaming, because there is an entertainment aspect to it. But now when I've done something in the game, when I've earned something, it's mine and I can do something with it. I can trade it, which is particularly exciting.
Well, even what's more, I think what's really exciting is, how like in a game, you might upgrade your character skin with like different accessories, clothing, obviously weapons. What if you could do that and it would actually be a dynamic NFT and the metadata would change so that those like updates would travel with you? They weren't necessarily only specific to the game. So that's something that we've built. We've built this sort of dynamic lore and narrative trait system, where we have basically a computational narrative PhD, which is essentially an AI storytelling scientist. And we have a team of writers, one of which who leads our team is from the comedy space and has written for writers' rooms with Dan Harmon, the co-creator of Rick and Morty, and also for really cool like entertainment brands pushing the envelope like Brud and Mischief. And so what we've done with our NFTs is each NFT character has its own unique backstory that's about a paragraph long. It's one story. And then there's these like narrative traits that either we could use in our game or someone else could use in their games. But as this character, accomplishes things, wins tournaments, goes to this virtual concert, or even an in real life concert that Artie's throwing, their lore will get updated, their traits will get updated. So I think that's a really interesting idea as well. Like, you're not just taking the visual element with you, but you're taking the history of your gameplay and your experiences with you.
You mentioned something. Are you guys planning on doing concerts?
We've already done 2.
Wow.
So we did a very under the radar NFT week party in November of 2021 in New York City. We had about 350 people there. These were people that were already in our Discord, and then also just like friends and family from different places who are like NFT curious and kind of gamers, people in fashion, music, sports. So we had ASAP Ferg, the rapper, perform. And then more recently at NFT Week in 2022 in June, we had about 850 people at Irving Plaza, which is a pretty iconic venue in New York City. And we made all of our holders VIPs. We gave them VIP access. basically in a private area. We gave away some merch to them for free. And then we had Nas and Wu-Tang perform. So it was probably
Wow.
the coolest NFT week party that not everyone heard about, because we were still pretty under the radar then, but it was an epic time. So we'll continue to do those things. We actually have an event coming up in LA at the end of October. We're taking over a store next to Supreme, kind of right on the row of all the streetwear brands. And we're doing a 3-day kind of in-store event, merch drop, and then also like a Web3 community night with a couple of panels and a cocktail event. So we're going to invite all of our holders there, give them some cool perks, but also invite the larger community. So yeah, I think the in real life part is really important. Obviously, you've seen that a lot in the NFT space, but I think that has to come to gaming. Because when I think about what we're trying to do by making like really edgy, culturally relevant, memeified games that live on social, it's not enough to just make games. Like, say like the mobile gaming publishers, they make games, they have no relationship with their users, and those users have no relationship with each other. There's no community, there's no culture, right? So if we're trying to really push community and culture, I think you have to bridge that gap and bring people together in real life. And there's really only one gaming company that I often talk about that's so obvious to everyone that does this and increasingly well is Riot Games. Think about what they do. They do esports and live events. They do film and TV. They do merchandise. They do the full spectrum of entertainment, but their wedge is gaming. And now they're moving upstream into mobile gaming to capture even more users. I personally believe the next great gaming company will be a 360 entertainment company where gaming is the primary, but you have to do everything else exceedingly well. And in our case, I believe you also have to get people together in real life and bring like that cultural aspect into, your world, to make it stickier and create more brand affinity. Another way to put it is, will the next Supreme be a gaming company?
Yeah.
I think Bored Ape Yacht Club has kind of already proven that it's definitely an NFT company, and now they're becoming a gaming company. So I do believe that's where things are trending.
And I'll say that, as someone who doesn't own a Bay C but wishes they did, the one reason that I really, started to really regret not buying, I remember when they minted, and I remember thinking like, oh, those are stupid, and I'm not gonna buy it. And then I held out for the Vogue, which was still incredible artwork, but they were supposed to be the Bay C color. Anyways, I remember thinking it was around October or so, September or October, right after the Mutant Ape met. What really started happening in social media was Bay C sent out their merch, and people in the wild would run into each other wearing their hoodies, and they would start to form these real life bonds. Like somebody would tweet a selfie that's like, ran into this dude wearing his Bay C hoodie while I was jogging around Central Park, and that's where I started going, oh man, I'm on the outside. Like that's not me. I want to be a part of that. And that right
you know what else they did? You know what else they did that was brilliant? Is Bored Ape Yacht Club on Twitter and Instagram would always repost or retweet those images to create this larger kind of brand narrative that they were everywhere. Like their stickers are on the Ferris wheel at the fair in San Francisco. Their hoodies are in Miami. They're in Brazil. They're in China. Like they created this kind of global presence by taking those social media posts of the merch and then broadcasting them out to all their users. And that worked so well, I think, to create this like brand halo.
Yeah. And I mean, that was really it for me. That was the thing that made me go, oh, what they did is they just transcended the digital world into the physical one. And now people are having real life bonding connections, because that's ultimately like naturally what we seek. And it's sure the digital feedback, when you get a like or whatever, you get a little bit of a dopamine rush, but making a personal connection to someone is really much deeper. It's rooted much deeper in, I guess, just human nature. So the fact that they were able to do that, and then like you said, they broadcasted every time it happened, and it happened everywhere around the world, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, these people are living a lifestyle that I'm totally jealous of right now. You just hit on something that ultimately became our company's mission statement, and I'll tell you the vision statement too. You said like authentic personal connections or something to that effect. So our company's mission statement is to forge authentic personal connections through community owned entertainment. And you could probably imagine almost any
company in this space kind of saying something like that.
Mhm.
So it's a little broad, but I think it's really true. Like that's what you're trying to do as a mission, is forge these like human relationships. Because at the end of the day, that's what we all want, especially with something consumer facing. We want to connect with people. We want to feel like we understand each other. That's the human experience. And then for us, our vision is more so about like, what are we trying to disrupt? So for us, it's about, making gaming and entertainment more accessible and equitable for everyone, especially for players and creators. And that's kind of like what cutting out the middlemen and going over the top into social with games does, and obviously owning your gaming experience, owning your assets. So, I think that ethos of like forging these relationships through this community-owned entertainment and then making things accessible, direct, and equitable, like that's what we all want.
Mm. And I mean, you guys, you really, I think the part that really you sold me on here was that you recognize that it does have to eventually transcend into the real world to form these true connections. That part is special. And the fact that you are starting out with a free gaming experience, casting the net as wide as possible, not setting it up to where, I mean, the biggest problem that we have in Web3 in general is fiat on board. Getting people to get crypto in their hands so that they can purchase it. That is by far like the hardest part to the whole thing. When you teach your mom how to set up MetaMask, the part isn't you're not worried about MetaMask. You're worried about, oh, we got to go to Coinbase or FTX, get them KYC'd, account set up, fiat. Oh wait, there's going to be a 5-day hold. Then we can like that whole process is the worst part. So with you telling people like, we can get you in the door, at least we're going to give you, a fun gaming experience where you can earn upgrade powers. It's a fun, slightly more adult experience. Then we're going to give you the opportunities to, have real world connections. It's very exciting to me. Yeah. So let's, we're kind of coming down the home stretch here. We're at 40 minutes so far, which is good. I want to wrap up by talking a little bit about truly why blockchain, though. Why not go the app store route and get it in front of all of these people, these millions of users who use the app store?
Well, because I believe the app store today, taking a 30% fee is so onerous in terms of like slashing your profit margins into such a minuscule number that I think it actually is corrosive to creativity. Like if you know that like your margins are so thin that you need this game to work on an epic scale globally, then there's no margin for error. And I do believe it becomes like the game is data science to the lowest common denominator of an experience. I think that we've seen that in the movie business, like, with the theatrical experience over the last 5 to 10 years, the only kind of movies that really work are either low budget horror films that have maximum upside. And then it's sort of like a numbers game, like they can all fail, but one can be a hit and it pays for the rest. Or more so it's a, grand slam swing of a summer tentpole movie. And I think that's kind of what I'm looking at mobile games like, okay, if I'm a mobile game publisher today, I have to make a hit that can be experienced by a really wide audience. So it's really broad in its appeal in all languages and all age groups, right? So it's like, once you do that, it's kind of for no one. Like when you make something for everyone, it's for no one, So I think that actually is corrosive to creativity. And I think it's the 30% fee that is the instigator to that kind of cycle. So if you can improve the economics for creators, I think you free yourself to be more creative and to say, hey, we can have a hit game for just 18 to 30-year-olds in North America, Western Europe, and Australia, New Zealand first, and then worry about global domination. Like we're making this beer pong Mortal Kombat game. Does it need to work in everywhere, all corners of the world? No, it doesn't actually. It can be really successful by just hitting this initial target, right? So I would say that's the first reason. And also I think, I grew up with the very early promise of Web 1.0, which was like, it's the free and open internet. And then by the time I was like, in college, we were on the path of, no, it's Web 2 and it's these kind of closed ecosystems and walled gardens and there's 5 winners, right? So Web 3 to me, and I think a lot of us, represents a return to that original promise. So those ethos are really about an experience that you own and control that's, peer-to-peer and, sort of cuts out the middlemen who are just lining their pockets, right?
You just spoke my language. This is a big discussion, a big argument I've been having on my social media platform is
Yeah.
that, I oftentimes think back in the early Bitcoin and even the early Ethereum days where it really was about anyone who had some electricity and a little bit of hardware could provide it and earn something for themselves. And all of a sudden, they had been given a currency that was borderless and they could
Yeah.
transact in a peer-to-peer nature without having to go through 17 different intermediaries and waiting for 3 days worth of drafting to take place.
Right.
That really was a special moment. We've unfortunately started to get away from that now, as we're seeing a large concentration of that capital in a
Yeah.
very few number of people's hands. But
Right.
I, I,
So
I circle back to where I think gaming really still is like the biggest hope for Web3 in general,
right.
simply because it is, anyone around the world can play the game.
Yeah.
We're speaking effectively a common language,
Yeah.
because we're using the same currency, we're playing the same game,
Right.
and
Right.
we transact.
And
Go ahead.
yeah, and well, I was gonna say, and also like if you think about the ethos of like Web3 of like, empowering the creator and the kind of owner, the end user, and kind of, no middlemen, that kind of gels with, the technology that we've pursued to take out the middlemen and go direct to players with our games. So that's kind of why the Web3 piece with the kind of way we're distributing games kind of fits nicely into one ideology, in my view. And I also think it removes the prospects of advertisers mining you as the product for data,
Mm-hmm.
which we've all been victims to over the last 20 years, essentially. Like because we don't have that 30% fee going to Apple and Google, we don't need to run ads. Like if you look at most mobile games, they try to capture currency from whales through credit card transactions, but also run ads to everyone else because they need to add another monetization method to really like increase their take because of the onerous fees and just how expensive it is to acquire players, like the customer acquisition cost. So you add all that up, they need to run ads. So imagine like games that don't need ads. And if you were to work with advertisers, it was in a more holistic way. Like our vision for the future of advertising is, what if you let players opt into partnering with brands on their terms? They keep the lion's share of the money, and then the matchmaker or platform, like what might be Artie, they take the minority percentage. So you kind of flip it, you inverse it. So imagine like you're a fairly well-known influencer or streamer, and you're like, yeah, I want to wear Red Bull on my avatar's jersey, and I want to get paid for that. Oh, cool. I don't know Red Bull, but like this ecosystem is going to match me up with them. And, boom, like Artie's made it possible for me to add that to my character. And I'm going to make 80-90% of the transaction. Phenomenal. Like, I think that's like advertising on the player's terms, so we're not like building that yet, but that's kind of like, if things work out, I think if there were to be advertising in our games, that's probably the type of path we go down.
How are you guys making money now?
Well, so if you think about how we're going to make money, it's going to be two ways. One, it's going to be by selling NFTs and then participating in the royalties on those NFTs to the extent that royalties still exist, which I think is an open question.
Yep.
But that's why it's important that you do have a mint price. I don't believe personally in free mints because I think royalties could go to zero, and if it does, so be it. But I still think even without royalties, the value proposition is still strong, where you as an owner can still resell your assets to other people, even if the people who made them can't participate. Well, they'll participate on the front side, and I think we'll still sell non-NFT items in our games initially that sort of like cater to an audience that's not ready to participate in NFTs. So, for example, in our beer pong Mortal Kombat game, the character skins are NFTs, but the arenas, balls, tables, cups, and power-ups may not be. So perhaps, those are in like timed boxes or chests along with some of the NFT character skins. Or you can just buy those things with a credit card transaction with a double click of Apple Pay or Google Wallet, because we can use those as a front end and a back end payment processor of our choice. So that kind of allows us to cater to three different segments. One is the free to play player who buys nothing, but their eyeballs are valuable because they'll spread the word. And then maybe a 1 to 3% swath of players who are comfortable making $5 to $25 purchases with credit cards through Apple Pay for low cost items. And then people who are comfortable paying for NFTs. And, right now our NFTs are more a premium price of a couple to a few $100s. But as we gain, more and more players, perhaps we have two tiers. Maybe we have that kind of premium tier for real collectors and these kind of really like marquee assets that people want to earn. But maybe we have like a lower tier where, no NFT is ever over $20, and I think that'll become important to get people access. And if you kind of look at like a parallel to like a Supreme or other brands like Off-White, I'll use that example too. They have really high cost expensive items that are dropped in like very small quantities that only the rich can afford, that are aspirational, but they also sell $100 t-shirts or hoodies every week, and they sell out at every store, right? So they kind of operate on two price points. They kind of always stay aspirational, but they also meet people where they are as well.
That's fascinating. That's good to hear. All right, one last question I got for you. We kind of glazed over this, and I really wanted to make sure I circle back to it because this was another part of your website that really caught my attention: the soundtrack, the music, the collaborations. You're not doing anything small there. You have real artists working on your soundtrack.
Yeah, so for our NFT character skins, we collaborated with a really famous music producer named Tiny, who I think is the biggest producer in the reggaeton space. He makes, quite a number of songs for Bad Bunny, J Balvin, Selena Gomez, Rosalia, and the list goes on and on. And I think reggaeton is arguably the biggest music genre in the world right now. Most people actually don't know that. But Bad Bunny is the biggest artist in the world right now. So maybe that kind of helps frame it a bit. And then after that, we collaborated with Take a Day Trip, which is a duo in the hip hop space, who work more often than not with Lil Nas X. They probably produced the majority of his songs from his last album and many of his hits from the prior album. But they've also made songs with Kanye West, Travis Scott, Kid Cudi, and the list goes on and on. So they've all made music for NFTs, but also Take a Day Trip is collaborating with us for music in our first game, which is called Pong Legends. So they'll be a part of that, and they're also advising us on the music side as well, and collaborating with us sort of on a larger level as well. So yeah, I think that's really important to like work with cool people. And if you're trying to live at this kind of nexus of, gaming and culture, music can be a part of that too. We're all multi-hyphenates, right? Like people who like cool music and, like cool clothing and games and like memes, like we're all the same people, right? We wear more than one hat. So I think that's how we've been thinking about it.
I love that. I mean, to me, that's a really, really important thing because we're talking about beer pong at the end of the day. And I'm thinking about my younger years and the music that was playing whenever I was playing it. It wasn't, video game techno backdrop. It was music, and
it was probably like hip hop, EDM, maybe some like hard rock or metal. It's like, if you were at a party, that's what you'd probably hear.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that was a really cool thing that, man, people overlook that. And that's not something I would take for granted when I play your game.
Yeah, and the other cool part about that, it's a smaller note, but like you have the commercial rights when you own our NFT character skins to the characters themselves, like most other projects, but also you get a video, you get a GIF, you get PFP images, you have all the lore and sort of generative lore narrative traits, and you have the audio file to the song that's part of your NFT, which you have commercial rights to that as well. So we have yet to see a lot of people do this, but we've had some people create their own songs with the audio and like rap over them and stuff. So
that's cool.
Kind of interesting idea.
That's really cool. Well, look, we're at a good point to sign off here and wrap up. What I would ask is, if somebody out there who doesn't know your project, what is going to be your elevator pitch for them? The floor is yours. What do you have to say about Artie at this point?
So we're producing really cool games for, a younger audience, and you can play these games right on social media and you can own your own game assets. So we're cutting out all the middlemen. We're going directly to you, the player, and you can kind of own your gaming experience. So that's really the style. And our games are going to be really wacky and wild and left of center and edgy. Kind of reminds me of the games I used to play when I'd go to the arcade as a teenager, the games that I wouldn't tell my mom about when I got home, So like, just imagine like the modern arcade living in Twitter or TikTok or Discord on your phone. That's what we're building.
Yeah, Aladdin's Castle was for me.
Yeah.
And for my Web3 audience, where can they find your NFTs?
So you can go to OpenSea and you'll find us either under Artie or the Artieverse. We might be changing the naming convention. We were using the Artieverse, predominantly, but we're kind of just going to the company name Artie now. But you can find us at artie.com. You can find us on Twitter at the Artieverse until we get that Artie handle. And join our Discord. But I would say Twitter at the Artieverse or artie.com. Those are your two best bets.
Awesome. Look, I can't tell you how much I have appreciated this conversation. You are
Likewise.
You are very smart. You know exactly what
you.
you're doing, and we need more builders like you in this ecosystem. I think in the long run, you are going to do major things, not only for your company and your staff, but really for the entire Web3 ecosystem. So
I hope so. I'll knock on wood on that. Yeah.
well, thank you again for your time. So that's
Thank
it.
you.
Everybody, make sure you go check out Artie because really it's some really cool stuff. I promise it's worth your time to just go to the website, poke around. I bet you're going to get interested in it because I sure as heck was. All right. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.